Okay, I think this is it. Let's start. Thanks again for being here, and well, hopefully it will be insightful. So to start, we have an agenda, and today's agenda is about 7 generic insights we got from Userneed Labs, as I mentioned. Then we will dive into questions, and then we have room for anything else that you need to know. So first of all, the generic insights we got, and these insights were created based on reports we made for a lot of different brands across the globe, and we translated it into generic insights. And the first one, it might not be a surprise, but we see, in the whole industry, a total overproduction of Update Me stories. And that means your audience actually requests different Userneed stories, and the newsroom normally creates too many Update Me, too many factual articles. And we like to call this a newsroom heart attack, because when there is a lot of imbalance, it doesn't really work that well to reach to your audience. It's not good for recirculation. It's not good for loyalty. It's not good for time spent on site and all that. And it is interesting to see that, when you make a more balanced way of creating articles regarding the Userneed model, we see all the beautiful metrics going up. So this is the first insight. Use it wisely. The second one is sections, and this might not be a surprise, but it is very interesting to do research about it. Sections require specific user needs as well. So there is no such thing as an overall user need strategy. It's probably very wise to look at different sections, your economic section, your political section, your maybe your lifestyle section, or whatever sections you run. And these sections will most likely address different audiences, and these audiences have different user needs. And in order to really understand what the value of these different sections are, you can gain a lot by creating the best thinkable user need approach to your audience. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dima, but I guess this pretty much covers it, right?
Well, because remember that every single section is competing against other competitors. You don't compete against other competitors as a whole. You actually compete. People choose to read technology story on one website rather than the other website. And sometimes you need to understand what type of user needs really, really resonate with the audience. And sometimes you just will take a decision. Remember, we were doing an analysis of one Asian publication where all of the areas were plateauing and not growing, and only one was really growing, and we were talking to the editor of that section and asked why. And they said to us that actually we find out that Inspire Me user need was doing very, very well for that section, and we created our strategy, editorial strategy, specifically around that. So we need to be able to say, well, according to our own methodology and on what we know about our audience, that's the reason why we commission stories exactly like we do.
Yeah, and maybe a sidestep, but also interesting. We'll cover that later as well. But for example, if you create multiple newsletters regarding your sections, it can be very wise to understand what user need performs best, and then create, I don't know, an Inspire Me newsletter for your economic section. And you will see that will bring in a lot of engaged audiences. All right. This is not per se user need related insight, Dima might argue, but what we see, and that is actually pretty interesting, this is a result from all the analysis we've done for a lot of newsrooms. This is, by the way, analysis of 10 different newsrooms across mainly Europe. And this varies from regional broadcasters to national newspapers to online platforms, etc. But what we see is that none of the articles are being read until the end. This is, of course, on average, right? And for factual stories, normally articles will be read until the end because, most likely they're more short because they're factual. But it's very interesting to see that in almost all cases, all your effort is not being paid back by the audience by, you know, a full read of articles. And that is something to take in consideration. And it can start by creating better user need related stories, because your audience will engage with them more, but also to consider maybe my articles are too long. And there is a famous saying, like, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. And maybe this also goes for your newsroom output, right? If you had more, if you just take a little bit more time, you can be much more concise and relevant to your audience. All right, next insight is actionable content seems very promising. Now, the reason why we've added this particular insight to the presentation is that, as you all know, the BBC once started with the user need model back in 2016. Dimitri, can you tell you a lot more about that? Because he was there, right? He's the responsible for it. But it did not contain the actionable Excel. We've added that in the latest model we've launched, the 2.0 model, where we've added the Connect Me and Help Me user needs. And those are the actionable user needs we're addressing here. And what we see is that the audience really, really appreciates that kind of story. So it's helped me improve my life. It's a lot of stuff that comes from SEO related search. You know, people want to know where they can park their car for free when there's an event. People want to know how to take a detour when there is a big traffic jam going on. All those kind of stuff is really, really relevant. And for regional broadcasters, for example, we see that the Connect Me part also really contributes, because they're very local, of course, and people really want to feel connected to the area they live in. And the Connect Me articles can help you generate a very loyal audience by addressing that a lot. So we thought it was interesting to see that across all the brands we've analyzed, that the actionable content is a promising angle. Anything to add, Dima?
Well, I guess the only thing to say is that whilst we are using individual examples, anonymized individual examples in every slide, the main topic of the slide stays relevant to all of the participants. And those participants are in user needs labs, which we are now halfway through, roughly. They don't really have anything in common. There are international, national, regional, local, niche players, all of them, like there is nothing that unites them. There are a couple of maybe coming from the same organization or the same country, yes, yep. But come on. So what you see on this slide and what you see on those slides in the past as well is the connection between the number of articles produced against the median popularity of each article. So we specifically, the whole beauty of user needs model is that you don't really care about the topic that you want to cover, and we never really recommend doing more of X topic or Y topic. It's up to you. It's an entirely editorial thing. But how you treat those stories and how you develop them and present them is really important, because it can make or break a story. And here on this slide, what you can see is that actionable articles are even a little bit slightly more popular than contextual. But contextual articles are still created more. And emotional also have some really nice performance as well in comparison to the overall volume. So just pay attention to that.
Yeah. All right. And then something really interesting, we also have a tool. It's called userneeds.smartdoctor.com, where you can check yourself how a specific article scores on the 4 main axes of the user need model, being factual stories, contextual stories, emotional stories, or actionable stories. And what we see a lot is that the numbers in the results are scored on all 4 angles. And that is something we advise you to prevent from happening. And it's very difficult to create stories that only take one angle. And maybe it's even not possible, although Dima and I, we are in many conversations about if it's possible or not. So there will also always be some factual information in an article. But as you see here, this article really resulted in a broad variety of different angles that have been touched. And this is disturbing and weird to your audience in most cases. So try to prevent that from happening. It's better maybe to take a little bit more time to really think, what is it that I want to get across? What is it that I want my audience to get from this particular story? And then write it from the angle, because it will be paid back in all the good stuff and all the good metrics we mentioned before. So this one is pretty interesting. I know that there is also a question asked up front about this, but what we see here, and you need a trained eye, I do admit that. But what we see here is that there is a connection between user needs and timing. And you can see there the far right axle is on factual stories. You see that, in the left side you see the hours of the day. So 7 o'clock in the morning, you see a big dark bar at factual. So people probably like to have headlines in the morning and have factual information. And maybe you should use that knowledge to tell them, you know, today we will be talking about these and these events. Stay tuned, because we will come back, we'll create follow-ups, we'll do additional stuff along the way. And you see that, for example, when it comes to emotional content, they have a lunch break peak and they have early evening peak. For contextual stories, it's also in the morning, but also later in the afternoon until the early evening. Sorry. And those kinds of insights, this is from one particular brand, but we see it across the whole brands that we've analyzed. It's interesting to take that in consideration and make sure that, you know, you address the right user needs on the right topics, and also in the right formats, but also consider that timing and even channel can be very valuable to address as well there. And then the last insight, we see all over that referral traffic is declining. Also a lot from social, so probably stickiness on channels is getting more, so people don't like to move from one channel to another, and you need to take that in consideration. And these kind of insights can be very valuable, because when you have, for example, a lot of search results, it's a good indication to really dive into your sales strategy and maybe do something with keywords. And if you have a lot of internal traffic, like this client has, then you make sure that your recommendations are well performed, right? And you have the right connection on topics. For example, you know, readers also read this and this and this, because it will help you to get your recirculation up and to get more loyal audiences. So I guess these are the main insights we wanted to share with you up front. And then we can go to our 5 topics that we wanted to cover regarding the user needs. And like I said, we've collected a lot of questions. We will share the questions with you, and then we'll answer it. Dima will answer it mostly based on the topics we cover. And the first one is about strategy. So user needs.
Maybe Rugi, it's worth mentioning all 5 of them, if you remember all five of them, just so people on call actually appreciate what type of questions are we going to address.
Yes, that's a good one. So it's on strategy, it's on culture. So how do you know, the culture change when user needs are being implemented? It's about the implementation itself. What do you, what do you find when you start to implement a user need model? It's on AI, and it's on the recognition of user needs and how is that defined, and maybe also differences in interpretation about the user need model. So those are the 5 topics we will cover, and this one is the strategy. So mostly you were interested in how can user needs help in determining a very good content strategy. And the questions we got were, what are the key effects publishers gain from working with a user need strategy in regard of editorial insights, workflows, changes in, I'm having a difficulty to read it, content production, and last but not least, user behavior. But also, which user needs are most common for popular brands that are looking for to reach a massive audience, and how do you craft the product for different moods of the user? And we had a lot more. Do users seek sources outside of mainstream media that offer diverse perspectives from subject matter experts? How do we stay relevant with a model that crystallizes? That's an interesting question. You know, when is the question is actually, is it time specific, right? Or should you change it over time? Do user needs change over time? And how do I find out I bridge the gap between my online readers and those still on print? Maybe something for you to talk about that, Dima, and how applicable might the model be for NGOs? Now, and last one, I am grateful to, thanks for your user need model. So much content strategy intel is designed for content marketing. Could you recommend resources that help leaders build content strategies based around user needs? So, Dima, it's a mouthful, but like I said,
well, let's go to slide number 1 with just the first batch of questions. We can go very quickly through them and making sure that we're addressing all of them, because
yeah,
just mindful of the time, I would like to keep at least 15 minutes, maybe 10 at the very end,
yeah,
to address the questions in the room. So, okay, so let's start with the most important thing, is that your mission statement of your organization, the reason for your existence, the values that you communicate to the audience via that mission statement, that document, that sentence needs to be connected to the user needs that you are satisfying with your work, right? There is no point of saying that you are going to be the first one to break stories, and then in reality, all you do is actually commissioning give me perspective stories, the majority of them, and vice versa. Sometimes we see a lot of examples of media organizations actually lacking focus, and those normally the lack of focus means lack of your understanding of what role you play in the market. So the question is, user needs equal your mission statement, and your audience why they consume you needs to be your why, because the trouble is that in majority of cases your why sometimes can be different. So let's start with the first one. What are the key effects publishers gain from working with user needs model in regard of editorial insights, workflows? Overproduction is one. Commissioning wrong type of content in wrong volumes for wrong audiences mainly is the answer to that. So once you start analyzing your output, because before we only analyze content according to topics and according to maybe formats, if you're lucky. Now we can add a third dimension to that analysis, and you are becoming much more effective in your commissioning. So when you go to your commissioning meeting, and I've seen a lot of practical examples of that, you go to commissioning meeting and you say, well, we want that story on whatever, King Charles's coronation, and I want an educate me story commissioned this time. Or we are talking about COP28, and I would like to have a give me perspective article published today because it ended, and I want to understand not what was signed, but what was the reaction of people who know. So because of that, I just returned from Brazil, where one of the biggest publishers in Brazil actually added user needs to their content management system. And I see time and time again in Europe where publishers are adding user needs modules to all their workflow tools, their commissioning machine, their planning tool, the content management systems there, of course, the editorial analytics tool. Like when SmartOcto approached me 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, I loved their proposal because they are taking user needs so seriously. Out of all of the other providers, you cannot ignore that angle. Basically, that's what I will say. In terms of growing massive audience and popular brands, what do they have in common? The rule of thumb is have the 4 axes of user needs. So you absolutely need to have the factual one, the contextual one, the emotional one, and the actionable one, because you can't really be approaching the question you are asking me about the massive audiences by only giving them something niche. If you go into niche audiences, you actually go quite deep into some specific user needs. Like, for example, everybody knows that Vox, a very well-known American explanatory website, has a model, and they only exist to provide contextual information, right? And because of that, but the 6 user needs they have, they all belong to contextual information. So they all sit under educate me and give me perspective, but they go much deeper than that. So I would say for reach, try to be as diverse as possible with that. And then once you start tracking things, go back and optimize. How do you craft a product for different moods of the user? Well, actually, that's another really good example which happened recently. Having done the analysis for website traffic and website engagement, we also, with another client of mine, have done the same thing for social media. And you started looking with some social media, some user needs really working well for social media and working less well on the website. And sometimes you will say, it's fine, we will never do an update me story for the website, but we will do an update me story for TikTok or vice versa. So, and time of the day plays a role. Weekends play its whole role as well, because sometimes you will say that actually, show me the most important update me articles I might have missed across the week on weekdays. It would be a really interesting way of looking at it, and so on and so forth. So I would say they play a big role, but you just need to be very specific in terms of what you want to achieve and start small, of course. Next one. Yep. So, do users seek sources outside of mainstream media that offer diverse perspectives from subject matter experts? Well, you know what? If I'm not mistaken, news is only 2 or 3% of world internet. Yep. So like people do really spend time somewhere else. And if you go to Netflix, for example, there is a big collection of documentaries which presumably gives perspective to people, or give perspective to people. So of course they do. And TikTok play a role. Like me, for example, I like cooking food a lot, and this is one of my passions. And I'm getting all the new recipes from TikTok, right? Because I don't bother going to any food-related websites. But a lot of food-related websites can actually learn a lot from food segment of TikTok, of how they need to present the information, how they need to communicate with the audience. So of course people go to various places. But the question is here on your reminding yourself of your website is that, do you signal with every single headline, do you signal a value that you're about to give to people in each and individual article with a headline, with a teaser? Because the problem is that you can write a great Educate Me article and then you will be not able to sell it because the headline will still be Update Me headline. How do we stay relevant with a model that crystallizes the needs of a specific time? Obviously, this has been addressed, so I don't really need to talk more on that. Here, I think that you just need to do the same amount of work for individual parts of your website and also add the weekdays and weekends version of that as well.
Yep.
How do I find bridge the gap between my online readers and those still in print? It's a great question. I remember the time when we brought Chartbeat into the BBC in 2013 or something, when radio bulletins were actually consulting the data, the live data that you had from the website to actually inform the order of articles or order of radio bulletins and stuff like that. It's an apocryphal thing to say, but I would say that actually the sooner you will merge two operations, the better. Point number one. Point number two is that actually drive your print agenda with your digital insights. Because what else? You don't have any other insights for print anyway, so you might as well get some insights that print will use. And how applicable might the model be for NGOs? Well, you definitely probably, I have some examples of media organizations that are not NGOs necessarily, but are niche organizations, and the kind of the 4 axis logic stays, right? Fact, context, emotion, action. But you probably need to play around with things that you want to cover. And the rule of thumb, and this is the exercise Ruth and I have done on numerous occasions, when you figure out what you want to cover and you apply 4 different axes to it and figure out what type of coverage you want. Because it might be one of those 4, and then you go deeper into and select the 8 user needs available to you and then pick and choose. Because guys, the most comprehensive model that we have published in March, I don't think it necessarily will be updated anytime soon. With I will struggle to figure out if there is a user need potentially that we have missed, frankly. So I would say start with existing things and play around with it.
Yeah, and to add, I think for NGOs, the Connect Me articles can be very relevant, of course, because they address specific topics that resonate within a specific audience group, and they want to connect in one way or the other with that topic. And of course, the contextual part will also be very relevant for NGOs. So that would be my, and maybe also inspirational stuff, depends on the NGO.
Yeah, that's what I think, that maybe it's not your job to inform people of what is happening because they are likely to have been exposed to that type of topic already. But the other three axes, the contextual, emotional, actionable, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would also be my pick. And then just try, right? See what happens and resonates best.
And the last one here is, can you recommend resources that help leaders build content strategies based around user needs? Well, user needs model 2.0 white paper, which is available on Smart Doctor website, is probably
we'll share the link,
place
but
to start.
yeah, start there. Yeah,
because it has, like, jokes aside, but guys, it's if you look at everything that is happening in user needs around the world, this is now probably the place where we probably collectively have the most up-to-date information on that. And you know, I know that a lot of other companies have played around with it and everything, but the only place which really has been curating and really experimenting with it with AI and with product solutions and everything else is here, right? And again, this is not me trying to sell you anything. This is just a simple truth that we know about user needs probably more than anybody else.
Yep. Okay, let's quickly go through the next one. We had a few other questions, but
what are the limits of information shortening text and time?
I think we covered it also in the insights, right?
How do you best apply the user needs model to regional and local news? Well, contextual information is super relevant for local and regional things, but at the same time, I also would say that everything about the actionable points about connect me and help me is very, very important. So I would say, I would say that all four axes are important, but if you want to start driving your engagement and really building, kind of forget about what is happening in your area, you will do update me stories anyway, but it's just a question of doing other three axes well.
Yeah. All right, so much for strategy. I hope we covered all the questions, and otherwise at the end we'll have time to do a little bit more if there is anything. The second topic is culture change, and what you have sent us, we kind of summarized it in this question. So how do you change the culture in the newsroom towards a user needs approach? And there is lots of questions. We'll go through the questions and Dima will answer it. But this is the main, this is the challenging question. Like, how do I introduce it? What will happen if I do it? So what is the most common reason why journalists don't want to start with the user need model? We should frame it into why will it work, but anyway, we get it. How to get newsrooms colleagues on board with the user need model? It's pretty much the same question, but still, how can I convince my peers to start applying the user needs? So, what is the best reason to tell them, give us a few golden coins? We will do that. Giving limited resources. How do we convince colleagues to spend less time doing straight news articles, which we know readers like and winners praise, to address other user needs? Now, that's an interesting question. We'll have some insights on that as well. And what is the biggest challenge in persuading a print-led newsroom to adopt a user needs approach? How can user needs help print in addition to digital publishing? Somehow related to the question we just tackled regarding the strategy. Good. And then the last one, I work in content marketing. How do I explain to non-marketing professionals in my company that it is worth placing a bet on meeting the user needs, working on concert with our CEO strategy to improve conversion rates? Okay, so I will go back to
let's talk like all of those questions. They do relate to culture change overall, and I think that several points to make here is that the beauty of user needs model is that we're not some random consultants who come and leave you with 100 pages deck and you don't know what to do with it, right? Because we never leave the editorial conversation. So the question which we're asking is that something has happened today. You can default to the update me story version, that's fine. But also, once you start tracking the user needs, you also will realize that actually contextual user needs on a story-by-story basis perform better, potentially, might not for your particular organization, but generally. Emotional ones as well, and recently actionable ones as well. So question here is that we never tell you what to write about. Go and, knock yourself out, do whatever you want to do. But there are just different approaches. And remember, user needs are just nothing else but angles to digital storytelling, nothing else. And you have been working with angles of a story forever, right? Like we all have been. And the only thing is that nobody was tracking it, and nobody was telling me the difference, that actually Inspire Me story worked better than Update Me stories. And it's just, how do we talk to newsrooms about this? Well, you start small. You start with just individual small sections, and you don't unleash the user needs model to everybody. You make sure that they are a little bit of a you work with your friendly editors. You don't start with editors who are saying no to you all the time. So you kind of and then also journalists are quite envious of each other's successes, and because of that, you are going to be able to achieve some success with some sections, and then some other editors will come and say, well, we would like to work with you as well. So keep it within editorial and keep it light. Make sure that people are excited about this, because actually we are all storytellers, right? And user needs is nothing but a storytelling technique.
Exactly. And Dima, you were the one who said once, user need is not about not covering the news. It's about covering the news from a different angle that will attract your audience better, right?
So thank you for quoting me. That's
I know. I thought, it was nice to quote you, but it is very true, right? And when there is a restraint from a newsroom or from specific journalists, it's always because they think user needs is not about covering the news, and that's not true. And actually, when you address specific news topics from an alternative angle, you will see that your audience will actually like it a lot more than the Update Me. So it's a win-win. People from DPG always say, the user need model is it's data in words. So it's where art and science meet one another, right? So where the journalist might feel he's, the artist creating stories, and user need is a very beautiful way to, supported by data, to really show what resonates within your audience, and then help the artist to create better stories and still cover the news. I couldn't have said it better, I guess.
Let's move on.
Yes, also because of the time.
So yeah. in terms of when of course you will continue doing Update Me stories, and of course you will still be doing straight news articles. That's fine. The only thing is that sometimes you will say, well, actually, if I'm going to take that story forward tomorrow, I know that AI might give me some really interesting insights in saying that if you want to take that story forward and that story belongs to business, maybe a Help Me article will be the best to choose from. You can ignore that advice, of course you can, but why would you, right? Because the advice that is given to you is still very much an editorial advice, and you still have your editorial hat on. And so I would say, if your business is about updates and fast news and everything else, you still do follow-ups, right? You still do, like I was talking to a group of Spanish publications today, and one of them, they said that out of 450 articles a day that they publish, 150 articles are pre-prepared. So my advice would be always to concentrate on pre-prepared articles and make sure that they satisfy specific user needs. Forget about other 300 that you will be doing anyway. You can't really forget the Update Me. It's really important. But the problem is that pre-prepared articles need to be much better framed. In terms of the and the last one, I think there was a question from a marketing person who worked on the SEO strategies as well.
Oh, do you want to go back to that one? Yeah, I think it was with digital and print, I think.
No, just next one. Yeah, digital print. We address digital print anyway. So in terms of the how do you explain to non-marketing professionals in my company that it's worth placing a bet on meeting user needs? Well, you can continue doing things that firstly, effectiveness of your organization will still go higher, right? I remember I was chief content officer at Culture Trip. We were creating a lot of articles that were SEO friendly, but we still were doing it across 3 user needs for travel: Inspire Me, Orient Me, and Help Me Plan. So not a single article was created that was not aligned to those 3 areas, and these are very much user needs things. So I would say it would be fairly easy actually because you also will tell your non-marketing people that this particular user need actually converts people 3 times better, or this particular user need engages people 3 times better. So worth doing.
All right. Now, implementation, our third topic. This is all about how do you start with the implementation of the user need approach. So again, we've collected a lot of questions. These questions were, what kind of user surveys are needed to inform the implementation of the user needs model?
Let's maybe just address them as they are. So I would argue, don't spend money and don't spend time on figuring out what really works for you. Start with a comprehensive model we have built, and then maybe 6 months later, maybe a year later, actually optimize it a little bit, because otherwise you are likely to be to spend a lot of money and time on those user surveys. I mean, you can go cheap and cheerful and quite fast with, say, email newsletter survey, for example, people who are already subscribing to you, and ask them why they are consuming you. But the answers are going to be spread across those 4 axes, right? So you might as well just start applying the model and then retrospectively figuring out, well, actually, maybe we can unite Give Me Perspective and Educate Me into one called Explain It to Me, or we don't need to do Keep Me on Trend or Keep Me Engaged and Update Me as separate ones, and we can do only one, and so on and so forth. So actually, we have done so much work on user needs across so many different continents and organizations that I would say that we already know a lot that we can give you for free. It's publicly available for you to start.
Yep, I agree.
What variables would you suggest to track to create the classification models other than metadata and topical analysis of the article? Well, the most important thing for me is to make sure that every article, every URL has 3 variables. One variable is topic, which you mentioned. One variable is format, which you mentioned as well. And the third one is user needs. So imagine that every story, say you publish a story in business, and it will say belongs to business, belongs to subcategory of business of personal finance, for example. And then you also do a story that has been written as a listicle. You select a listicle for your metadata, and then you also say, well, actually, this is an Educate Me user need, for example. So every story, ideally, if you export it back after 3 months or 6 months, every story will have those 3 things to play around with. So this is what we recommend.
Yeah, and when it comes to formats, it can also be very useful, right? Because if everyone within the newsroom understands that, you've created 5 questions about, or you've created, smashing listicle on, or whatever you call them, doesn't really matter. But everybody knows it consists of 5 photographies, 2 quotes. There's also 1 minute of video. Then everyone is aware that that's what you create, right? And when you cover the story, you say, okay, we need to say something about whatever topic occurs in the newsroom. Let's do a 5 questions on, and then everybody knows how to make it, and you will know from the data that format works really well, and your audience will recognize you because you do it quite often.
So do you have any advice on how you would keep track of articles and which user needs you're meeting? So this is exactly the same thing. Ideally, you would step number 1 is export everything you have in your output, and depending on how much content you have, you need to start with maybe 1,000 articles, ideally, or 3 months worth of articles, so whichever is greater, and then add 3 manually added things in your analysis before you give it to Excel specialist or something like that. So one of them is topic, one of them is user need, one of them is format. So this is what we recommend.
Yeah, and a simple example, you can just throw around URLs within your colleagues and ask them what do you think it is. If you have the model, it's a good way of starting the conversation internally. And you can also use userneed.smartocto.com because to check if you're on the right track, because the AI recognition is pretty good.
Well, but also remember that it's not rocket science. It's okay to disagree. As long as you agree 9 cases out of 10, you will be okay, because always it will be, I mean, Rutger and I have been sharing articles on Slack for the last 3.5 years, and we probably are in agreement 9 out of 10 times, so it's fine. It's just, the only thing is that please stay away from articles that have several user needs at the same time, because then you will have a really big problem of selling it to the audience, because the default headline is always likely to be an Update Me headline, and that's not representative of different user needs. So for me, those kind of how do you call it, bloodbath or Frankenstein
mudbloods
mudblood, yeah, not bloodbath, mudblood, whatever, Frankenstein articles are not great, because you are audience has no idea that you will be educating them at the same time as inspiring them in the article if the headline is Update Me headline.
And why not cut them up? They're probably too long anyway. Make 3 of them, and then you have 3 different user needs, and you can also check if your audience likes it, and it becomes more pinpointed and focused, and the headline will be optimized.
We don't have unlimited resources to make big surveys and focus groups. How we may get users new for lower budget? Well, we just said it. Just use the model that we have shared. Use all the resources. I mean, if you go to SmartOcto blog, there is an article dedicated to each user need. There are lots and lots of resources for user needs already. You don't need to spend money on that anyway.
No, I agree. Okay.
Which user need must be any newsroom's first priority? Well, depends on the newsroom, right? Depends on what I've started with, your mission statement and why you exist in the market, because you would argue that Atlantic will not have a Update Me as the most important thing because there are other providers in the American market. But when it comes to Give Me Perspective or Educate Me or Inspire Me, it could be Atlantic's first priority, maybe. But the question here is that if you only have one article to write to your economy section or technology section, don't pretend that you are able to cover the world in content by creating Update Me stories. Because if it's only one article, it's clearly not, clearly you're not seen as a place where you can be updated on something.
Yeah, one of the things we like to say is, the early worm, the early bird gets the worm, and the second mouse gets the cheese, right? So the Update Me article is easy to create when something new appears and you just want to write, and then you say, we will update you later on. And people will start searching for the topic because they have questions about it when they hear about it. And then the one that creates a user needs story with something additional on Update Me is, that's the second mouse, right? He will walk away because SEO results will be better. It will be ranked higher. And then, you were the first maybe with an Update Me story or a very short announcement, but the second one who took a little bit more time actually
it's almost like when you're in the newsroom, something breaks and you know that you will do an Update Me story, but your immediate reaction needs to be, okay, the second article that we're doing about that story is actually going to be a Help Me article, because that's what we know about the collection between the topics and the formats and the
Oh, sorry, last one.
Yeah, what's the best approach to involve users and to create a good communication state in media? Well, actually, the reason why BBC created the user needs model in the first place and how it did it, it went around the world and asked people the same type of questions. Why do you use news in the first place? And I think that actually one of the reasons why people ignore news recently, news avoidance and all that, is because we as an organization, as an industry, have failed to project our value to people. That's the most important thing. We're not seen as vital, like Spotify or Netflix or something like that. And I don't buy the argument that people say, but we have to cover it because it's important. Well, it doesn't. If it doesn't reach anyone, you failed anyway. So I think that asking people why they consume news, then tracking their actual usage, because they always will flatter themselves in terms of why they consume news, and you need to see the reality of it. So you always will be able to actually show them actual examples of what you have done and ask them, well, what kind of need it satisfies, this particular article satisfies. And if you frame the articles correctly, it always will satisfy a particular user need.
Yeah. All right. We need to go on. We have 2 more topics to cover and 15 minutes left. So
let's try to do it in 5 and leave another 5 for questions.
Yeah. So this is all about user needs recognition. And the questions you send in is, how do you actually recognize the different user needs? And is the model with the 8 needs that we've created, is it adequate? Well, these are the questions. Confusion between Keep Me Engaged and Update Me and Give Me Perspective articles, how to differentiate between them. Well, I think it's there is a lot of information available. You can get to the website of SmartOcto for free, type in the search bar how to write, and then fill in the user need that you want to understand. We have all the information available on all the different user needs. as Dima mentioned before, you might decide to combine them, right? Where Update Me and Keep Me Engaged is just, keep me informed, and then it's your user need altogether. The main difference between Keep Me Engaged and Update Me is all about the facts, just factual information: who, what, when, where, why, how. Keep Me Engaged is an overview of how other channels, this can be social media, but it could also be radio, TV, newspapers, any channel you can think of, how they covered the topic in order to get an overview and keep you on, keep you engaged in order for you to actually contribute and participate in the debate or discussions. The difference between Update Me and Give Me Perspective is quite obvious to me, because one is very factual, Give Me Perspective is very contextual, so that's more a deep dive. This is where the analysts and the experts come in. They give you the pros and cons on a specific topic. They help you to form your own opinion, whereas the Update Me is just factual information, right? So I guess.
What are the main differences between headlines when writing for different user needs? Of course, you will see the difference between Give Me Perspective will be experts react to XXX, or COP28 ended with a draft with a resolution, whatever. And then the Give Me Perspective will be about why I think that COP28 failed, for example. So a lot of opinion pieces always are giving people perspective. So if the headline matches the body of the text, you always will be able to actually say what kind of perspective, what kind of user need it will show.
Yeah. This is interesting.
Know what they need and want, or should we be led by the data, or more nuanced approach that uncovers, anticipates, and then has gut instincts about needs and wants? Oh, how much time do you have for that?
Well, let's not. This is, of course, yes, I would say trust your audience.
Yeah, well, you know what the issue here is that I'll give you a question back. Go back to your newsroom, ask people in the morning to segment your previously 24 articles published in 24 hours, segment it from bottom to top, so show everybody the least popular articles, and I can guarantee you that the majority of them will be Update Me. Not because Update Me as a user need is unpopular, but because other user needs actually engage people much better. Yep. So when this is a tool that Rutger mentioned, you take your copy from your article, you paste it there, it will analyze it, and it will show you in reality how many percentages are in various places. It's not an ideal tool yet, but as all tools we are learning, and at least it will show you, okay, if you want to move it to another user need, you need another story, because this story doesn't satisfy an actionable user need, for example. So the majority of this is about kind of you understand what kind of story you want to pitch at the pitching process, at the commissioning process, and you already will know that if, for example, you're writing contextual piece, you will have 3 or 4 bullet points to make sure that you have. And because of that, I actually will trust the behavior of the audience more, because this is what they actually, instead of what they say, what they actually do. And I don't necessarily think that this is an opposing things, having data about people and having some kind of gut instinct. The only thing is that your gut instinct still needs to be verified, because the fact that you have a gut feeling doesn't mean that it's right.
Yep, I agree. All right, and there's 2 things I wanted to show. We will share the URL, but it's userneed.smartocto.com. You can just throw in your text and it will analyze the user needs. It's free to use. And as Dima said, it's not perfect, but it is pretty close to being very useful. And the other thing we have within the user need stack in SmartOcto is something we call the quadrant model, and it's related to user needs. It's a very effective way of understanding what resonates best with your audience. So we have 2 axles. One is on reach, the other one is on engagement. That will immediately give you 4 quadrants where you can actually understand that, high reach, high engagement are the ones you really want to create, because they contribute to your overall content strategy, they contribute to conversion strategy, they contribute to returning visitors, loyal visitors, all that stuff. And the beauty of the model is that once it recognizes that, if, for example, you have low reach but very high engagement, you probably need to optimize your distribution strategy, because you haven't reached enough people. But if you reach them, they really engage with the article. Or when it's on the right bottom, it's high reach, low engagement. You probably need to enrich it, right? So that's a topic that resonates with your audience, but you haven't addressed it to the full. And so maybe to enrich it with additional media types, or write it from a different user need perspective, can actually bring that article and topic to the right-hand corner. That's where you want to have it. We have notification, we have all sorts of stuff. We don't have time to show it, but for recognition, since it was a question, it is very helpful. Now, rapapa, the most interesting thing everybody is talking about, AI and user needs. How can AI help to elevate the user need model, right? So the questions we had: is there a way to connect user needs to a predicted sentiment of the user, like you're writing too much bad news? And how can it inform curation? Well, Dima.
Well, the issue here is that if something happens and people don't really like the negativity with it, which maybe update me is the wrong user need for that particular story. Maybe you actually need to educate people about what is happening and why it's happening, or giving them a perspective, interesting example of why it happened, how it can be improved, or something like that. The issue here is that as soon as you start tracking data based on user needs, then you will be able to start create those connections that a human brain of a very tired editor or very busy editor is not able to make immediately, and AI actually can help you with that. So you go to the morning meeting and you already have some prompts by saying, well, these stories performed really well yesterday. If you want to take them forward today, these are the proposed solutions of how you should do it. It's not that AI will write an article for you, God forbid, not, of course not, but you will be able to say that actually that topic and that user need really go hand in hand. So that's how I would do it. And there are other ways. If you have different user needs coming from different verticals, then your front page can be curated in a different way, based not on topics but on user needs. So you can have a model called, this particular organization teaches you or helps you with your life, or these are your compatriots you need to be proud of, la 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 la, all of that. And this is all will be based on AI.
Yeah. And AI can also help you tag your articles, for example, right? We already do that with SmartOcto, but yeah, okay. How can AI help to elevate the user need model? Well, I think in many ways, right? AI is very well occupied within SmartOcto, for example, where it can help you give suggestions on readability and user needs for paragraphs, where it can give you suggestions on headlines and user needs. All sorts of combinations are there. And the beauty, and I'm almost trying to sell SmartOcto here, but that's not my main reason. But what makes it stand out within SmartOcto is that the AI is combined with a North Star metric. So the question always is, what is AI optimizing? And what we've tackled is that we've combined it with your strategic goals, right? So if you want to get more engagement, the AI SmartOcto has in place can help you with user needs and engagement to come up with a new headline. Or if you want to get more conversions, the AI of SmartOcto can help you, to accomplish that regarding user needs and topics, for example. So that's important to understand. What actions could news publishers take right now to integrate generative AI tools? Well, there's a lot to answer on that. You really should be aware of, the guidelines that are out there, how the AI is being used, on what data is it trained, where does the information come from. So, the short answer is book a demo with us and we'll tell you how our AI looks. But there's lots of alternative tools available, and everybody knows, of course, the ChatGPT, but you probably want something else. And there is a difference, right, between large language models and AI. And it's also, I think, smart to do some research on that. It's too much information for now, but I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dima.
No, I'm keen for you to show that screen grab that you that you had. So I'd love to hear more about actionable content. Yes.
Yeah, you want to answer this one?
I'd like to hear more about actionable content and your thoughts on the possibility of using ChatGPT to generate personalized messages, reports, emails, social posts. Well, like I think SmartOcto probably in the new year need to have like a separate seminar specifically on how these things are going to be integrated, and this is what we really wanted to show you. And this is a really important thing, that where you can paste your content and write your content, and then depending on your output, or depending on the user need, or depending on whatever you want to achieve with this content, you can actually see whether it matches your perceived goals or tasks or not, right?
Exactly.
I'm super excited about this particular thing because if I were the active editor, I would be using it all the time. Not because I don't want to do regular journalism. Regular journalism goes without saying, it will be there. The only thing that AI helps us is to optimize what we do for the benefit of our users.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And this is the screen grab of the functionality that we have in place. We've added the business goals to it. So you, like I said, you can filter on the different business goals and then ask it, for example, throw in a story, put a headline, give me a new headline that engages with my audience regarding the emotional user needs, and it will give you 3 examples. And then you can, either use it as the source or you just pick one and start A/B testing it.
Well, we promised, let's keep the example because we only
Yes,
have.
we'll skip the example. We'll have a few questions left, right? We have 5 more minutes.
So we have three questions. So how do you determine whether an article has actually been read? Number of clicks on the title, time spent on the article page. Rutger.
Yeah, I can't read the, or maybe I can.
Well, how do you determine whether an article has actually been read? Whether it is number of clicks on the title or time spent on the article page?
No, well, we make a difference, right? Within SmartOcto, because that's the only thing I can answer, is that in SmartOcto, we can actually measure the amount of people who click on an article, but we also have something that we call the loyalty click. And we measure if people are still on the page after 10 or 15 seconds, depends on how you want to define it. We call that loyalty clicks. And of course, we also measure if people actually, the scroll depth and if they actually went way down to the page, and we even know how much time people normally on average spend on reading amount of words, and that way we have very deep dive analysis to prove that an article has been written till the end or not.
We are a B2B publisher. Hi, Marcella. When analyzing our industry-specific articles, I often get that they lack emotional elements. Is that a problem? If so, how to integrate emotions into, say, a piece about a new report? It's a really good question, Marcella. I think that the question here is that remember how emotional user need is all about people in the center of a story and people who have gone through something difficult or have achieved something, and maybe your interaction about the report, maybe people who are representative of report users, and you are telling their story, how they consume certain types of news, for example, or you write not about the report, but maybe about an editor whose job was very interesting and very complicated and very probably a little bit challenging as well. So I think it's you just need to say that some user needs should not be applied to some topics, for example. So we're just going to say that Inspire Me user needs and emotional user needs, of course, they have a role to play in B2B role, but you just need to be specific and concentrate on your mind on executing it well. And the last one here is, well, what analysis of user needs has SmartOcto done in more authoritarian contexts with polarized media environments? Is there a shift of importance of different access points with the audiences?
Yeah, again, I can't read the question because for some reason
the question is whether there is a different model for countries with free media and with authoritarian media, for example. Is there a difference in terms of what people would like to consume? And
yeah, that's a good question.
It's a good question. Well, I think people are people, and I remember when I was still at the BBC, we were analyzing the content done for Telegram for BBC Persian service, which obviously is banned in Iran itself. Yeah. And of course, the update information was a really, really important area, but when you educate people is also very important. So I would say, anonymous attendee, I would say actually analyze your content and make some options based on the model that we have and see what you have afterwards.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, there's one more tip I want to give you. We have recently in December launched a URL. It's called userneedsfornews.com. We have all sorts of small crash courses on everything regarding user needs. Might be helpful. It's blogs, it's simple tips, it's all sorts of stuff. It's a collective thing. It's like an advent calendar. We'll add something to it every single day during December. Might be useful to check out. And I guess it's 3
Well,
o'clock.
there is just another question. I'm typing the answer live to Chani now, but the question is, hi Chani, which media outlet is using the model at its best and why? I would, if I were you, I would all go to the Conversation UK website because they have been so particular about their user need model, and they only are probably the only organization in the world that exposed the user need in their UX to public. So you can actually navigate the website around, give me perspective stories or educate me stories or motivate me stories. So they're quite good.
And they have only 4. They only recognize 4 user needs, right? So you don't need to have all 8. They have 4, and that suits their purpose. But we also see examples in the Netherlands. The regional broadcasters are experimenting a lot with user needs and creating all sorts of stories. But it's not visible on the outside because you cannot see the tags. But yeah, there are different examples out there. And in the white paper we've created, we have many examples of brands that use their own specific user need models, and you might want to check those examples to learn more.
I think that given that we are now already 1 minute over, there are 2 ways we can do it. Either people who have asked questions and there are questions in the chat that we can answer them now, or we can actually answer them as part of our articles. But I think if we delay a stopping of this webinar by maybe 5 minutes, let's quickly answer because it will be a polite thing to do. So thank you for your answers in the chat. Hannes. Reporters in particular tell me that the element of surprise is lost with the user need approach. What do you answer in such moments? Well, it might be lost to them, but it's not lost to the audience because audience has not yet seen a piece. And sometimes if you ask somebody to write a story, remember that you are still guiding reporters. They're not running the show. You are still their editor. And if you say that give me perspective angle is more important than them, I don't understand what surprise is missing because surprise is still there for the audience because the piece is not done. So I don't buy that argument. But if you feel that you meant something else by that, please get in touch with us and we'll look at it again.
Yep.
Christian.
There's a question about experiences with Balkan online media. I see here. We've done a lot. We have a company also in Serbia, so that's Smart Doctor is also situated in Serbia, which is Balkan in itself. But we also work for Libertata, for example, which is Balkan. We have lots of Croatian brands that work with us. So yeah, we do have experience. And if you want to learn more, please reach out. We're happy to show you some examples.
There's a question from Christian. Thank you for it. To turn insights into actions, the editorial team has to work differently, accept the data, and learn to plan topics differently. How do you achieve this, and how do you help? Hopefully, during the implementation answers, we answered that question. But you start small. You start with individual sections. You show them. You do some analysis of work before you show something to them. So you still say, write about what you want to write, but there are better ways of writing it. And I don't want to repeat myself in that respect. So start small, start with friendly editors, get some help from people who already have done it. Smart Doctor are a really good place to start and bring them in and to talk to your editors, for example. I'm starting a new job in January, so I won't be able to help in that respect, but thank you for your question. We asked the Balkan question. So Francois, hi Francois. The user need model is widely used on mobile and media websites, but did any news publishers try the model in a daily edition, print or digital? Which one? Well, we didn't show you in this presentation, but we have in our white paper, we have a whole image dedicated to about maybe 25 to 30 different outlets globally that have either adopted the user need model or experimented with it. So there are many of them, like ranging from Wall Street Journal to really, really small Venezuelan publications and everything in between.
Yeah.
Okay, hi Jeremy, good to hear from you. One challenge I have is how to get journalists to actually write it in a different way, if it is educator perspective rather than just add the tag to it. Well, don't tag it as educate me if it's not an educate me story, right? So I do a lot of, and we have done numerous examples of workshops where you sit down, you give them an update me headline, and you ask them politely to come up with headlines reflecting other user needs, and that's the only way how you do it. And then you unpack it, and you maybe even give them tasks to actually, you submitted this story, won't publish it in this way, give me perspective example on that, and this is a printout of how to write a give me perspective article. So I think that we need to be much more directional, frankly, here, because it's I find news gatherers, i.e. reporters, probably the most flexible bunch of all media people, because they are service providers and they provide a very important service to us. And they always, at least at the BBC, they always were saying, we want to do more digital stuff, tell us exactly what you need and we'll do it, but tell us exactly what you need. So I think that's it, no?
Yeah, I think so too. I think we've answered all the questions.
No, there is a last question from Roger. Hi, Roger. In regions where journalism is more compromised, such as Latin America, do you have any successful use cases? Find a Venezuelan outlet called El Pitazo and talk to their founder and editor-in-chief. They have achieved wonderful things with user needs, and they're small, and then in Venezuela. And talk to Globo. I worked with Globo for about 3 years. They have done wonderful things with user needs as well.
Yep.
I think that's it. And well, thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks for sticking around, and sorry for running over time, but I guess it was all very interesting. Thank you, Dima, for showing up here. It will be one of the last times that you will be available as a consultant regarding user needs. So
that's true. But I will still work with user needs, just in a different capacity. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sticking with us for 7 minutes that we overran. And there will be, I guess, what is the follow-up, Rutger? What everybody will get after that?
Yeah, so like I said, we will continue writing in December on userneedsfornews.com, where we have the advent calendar with all sorts of content. But we will also wrap up the answers to all these questions, and we will create 5 more posts on the topic, the strategy, the culture change, the implementation, etc. And we will share that on our website. And of course, you're free to subscribe to our newsletter. We will inform you there as well. But we will make a wrap up of this Ask Me Anything.
Okay.
So thanks again. Happy holidays. Have a wonderful Christmas. If we don't see you before the end of the year, Happy New Year. I guess it's that time of the year where you can say that. Dima, again, thanks for showing up. And yes.
Thank you. See you soon, Rutger, and see you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.